Hello, so I've had a few people asking me if I can make a video on how to make spears. So I'm going to go through making a fletched throwing spear. In the process we'll also cover a spear that's unfletched, so if you don't want to stick feathers on it then you don't have to. It'll end up looking something like this one when we're finished. So for that you're going to need a stick, obviously it's a spear. This is a piece of hazel. You want to cut it about between 5 and 6 feet long, a little bit longer if it's going to be a thrusting spear and we're not fletching it. It can be sort of 7 feet long, it's not a problem, and about 1 inch in diameter. When you cut it, you want it to be straight. It's not going to stay straight. So this has developed a natural bend in the middle just here. So we're going to need to sort that out. But we're going to need a spear shaft, variety of spear points. You'll be seeing these up close in a little while. Doesn't matter which one we go for. And then if it's fletched, we're going to need some feathers. Flight feathers from any medium-sized bird. Raven, those are goose feathers. You could use a swan and just cut them in half. Turkey, would be fine. Anything like that. The only important thing is they both come from the same wing. So either the right wing or the left wing. Other than that, it doesn't matter. And then you'll need some cordage to whip everything together. That's made from hemp. I can do another video on how to make string if anyone wants me to, just let me know. And then we'll also need some glue. This is a pine pitch glue, so it's 3 parts pine pitch to 1 part charcoal. Right, let's get started. Also going to need fire, obviously. So to get this bend out, if I bring this around this way, bend in the middle, just here. And we need to get rid of that because otherwise it won't fly straight. So we're going to bring this over the fire and heat up the area that we want to straighten. And then when that's nice and hot, keep it rotating so you don't burn it. Keep it moving backwards and forwards as well so you don't burn it. When that's nice and hot, we're going to grab our spear straightener. Slide that down to our point. Our bend's just here. Get that slightly in front. And then we're just going to put the pressure downwards against the spear straightener. Just going to hold that until it goes cold. And then when we slide this off, that's got rid of that bend. If you don't have a spear straightener, you can do it without one. So we're now going to work on this bend here. So I'm going to bring this back over the fire, get it hot again. And then instead of using that spear straightener, I'm going to grab above and below the bend, stick it on your knee, and just bend it against your knee and do exactly the same thing. The reason we're heating it up is because there's moisture inside the wood. If we heat that moisture up, the wood becomes more supple and won't snap as easily. It will still snap if you do this, so don't bend it too far, do it a little bit at a time. And you just keep working the whole way along until you've got a reasonably straight spear. Depends how much of a perfectionist you want to be and if you want to get it completely straight. For me, this is straight enough. So I'm going to leave it like that. Now I'm going to change my camera angle round and we'll get everything fitted together. Hello, so we're down by the fire. I've got a nice deep groove cut in my spear shaft. It's really, really important that this is super deep and not really, really shallow. And then we're just going to decide which one of these points is the best fit. Either Solutrean style flint, this is a piece of a deer antler, and then we've got a shin bone leaf point as well. Sorry, that's just my glue bubbling away on the fire. I think this leaf point is going to be the best fit, so we're just going to try it out for size. Yeah, that's a really, really, really good fit in there. So I'm going to remove that. dip it into our glue. Nice generous coverage. Whilst the glue's still hot, I'm going to slide this straight back in, and then if you lick your finger, it just glides over the glue, and the glue doesn't actually stick to your finger. I'm going to move my glue off the fire, because that is very hot. So now let's get it bound in whilst the glue's setting. You need about a foot of cordage, sorry, 18 inches of cordage. Handy little Laval wire knife. Check out the video on this if you haven't already. So what you need to make is a loop with a tail at one end, long piece of cordage at the other, and that loop needs to be long enough to go from the notches in your spear point down to below where the spear is hafted, and then covering up the tail and start at the notches. I'm going to go around a few times at the notches, come down to the bottom, and it's really important that you make sure that you're not doing it up super tight. It needs to be tight but not really tight, but there needs to be no gaps between cordage as it runs round. If you've got a gap, undo it, start again, because it really matters. It's important that you also check back, make sure there's no gaps there. And you're going to keep whipping round until you only have enough just to poke through. So you're going to take the tail, poke it through the loop, hold this tight, and the tail that sticks out the top, you're going to pull this until it disappears under. Just like that. And then we're going to take our knife, trim off that tail at the top and the tail at the bottom. Now we're going to bring our glue back over. Some of this should still be hot enough, so I'm going to dip our finger in there and just run a line of glue around the cordage. Same with this top bit. And then we're going to get this back over the fire very quickly, flash it over the heat, and all that'll do is give a really nice shine to our glue. And that's the point. Finished. Now if we're going to fletch it, bring it to the other end. First of all, we're going to drill a hole, which is going to be to attach to our spear thrower. The first thing we want to do is trim our feathers. If your feathers, if you're buying feathers and you're not going and foraging them, you'll buy them from a fletcher and they'll come cut like this. You don't have to trim them if they cut like that. If you're going out and foraging them, I'm going to trim these anyway because I don't particularly like this shape. If you're going out and foraging them, or you're getting them from roadkill or from animals that you butchered yourself, you'll need to trim them. So you're going to cut them to size. These want to be about 4 or 5 inches long for a 6 foot spear. They can be longer than that, it's not going to do any harm. They don't want to be any shorter. And then you're going to take 2 bits of wood, line your feather up, so this is going to be the bottom and this is going to be the top. The bottom of your feather, the corn in the middle wants to be right on the outside, top of your feather wants to disappear into here, and everything that's exposed is what we're going to be burning away. So this is a log that I actually split for this, so these fit together really nicely. So now I've all got this in place, I'm going to take an ember from the fire and I'm going to touch the hot ember onto my feather points. This is only a tiny ember, so it's going to be a slow process. Just pull off that excess, and that's one feather trimmed to shape. And then we're just going to do the same thing with the other one. So same thing. Take our ember, burn away all the exposing feathers. You can use a flint knife for this, but it doesn't tend to leave as even of an edge. And you need a good surface to cut onto, which for this you don't. Then we'll take that off, and that's our second feather trimmed to size. There we go, and now what we're going to do is grab the top few rungs, and that will become apparent why later. Same thing at the bottom. Grab the top and bottom few, so just like this. Same thing here, a few at the bottom, at the top. Right, that's absolutely fine. They don't need to be completely gone. Let's get them stuck onto our spear shaft. Glue's going to go back onto the embers. So now our glue's nice and hot. If you've got enough space in your glue pot, you can actually just take your whole feather. You're going to dip the bottom in the glue. You've got a nice covering, and then you're going to stick this onto your spear shaft with about 2 to 3 inches left at the top, space for the binding. And you're just going to hold this on until the glue sets. There we go, that is set in place. And we're going to do the same thing with the other side. So we're going to bring this round this way, get our feather, bring it over to our glue, and make sure it's opposite. And just hold that on until the glue goes firm. So that's our feathers attached. Very nice. And now we're going to get everything bound. So you're going to need the first bit about 3 feet of cordage, or a metre. And then you'll need another bit of cordage It's about a foot. So we're going to start off with our longer bit. So exactly the same as how we did before. We're going to have a tail and a loop, and this time the tail and loop needs to be the same length as the fletchings, and then needs to come above about 1 inch and below 2 to 3 inches. Try this out for size. That is perfect. And now we're going to grip this at the top, just like we did at the spear point. Start whipping round. The top and the bottoms want to be reasonably tight, but not super tight, just like they were on the spear point, so we can pull the cordage back through underneath. And you can see now why we left tops of the feathers cut off. So now you're going to cut into the feathers. I'm using quite thick cordage, so it will split the feathers slightly, but for functionality purposes, does not matter at all. And now you're just going to follow this line round. And here it wants to be nice and tight. Not so tight that you can't pull the cordage back underneath. And the other thing that can happen as well is your cordage can snap if it's too tight when you try to put it underneath, and then you end up having to redo everything. So if you find it's not working, undo it and do it back up again. So that's actually long enough. So I'm going to keep this pulled tight. Grab our tail and pull this under. Once it goes up to about halfway, you can then cut off your top and bottom tails. And that is that bit done. So actually your feathers will go back together quite nicely. For our very last bit of cordage, same thing, loop with the tail, and that's going to go down to meet this one here. And this is to stop the hole we drilled causing a split down the spear when we launch it from our spear thrower. I'll leave that exactly the same, whip all the way around, hook it underneath, pull it underneath, cut the tails off. And now we need to apply a little bit more pine pitch, and we're done. So this is still hot enough to use with our finger. And I'm just gonna put this over the bottom cordage. Over the top cordage, and that just keeps everything nicely fixed in place. some over the tops of the feathers as well. And there we go. One fletched, bone point throwing spear. Let's go launch it at something. Hello, we're in a field. Spear's all finished, points on, nice little bone tip, fletching's all done. Got my spear thrower. So we are going to get this locked in. Hopefully I've got enough space. I'd say that works. Jump in the comments with what you want me to see making next. Thank you so much for watching and have an absolutely beautiful day.